get this breakout started. My name is Galen Hall. I live in Union City, Tennessee, and back in the mid to late 90s, up in a Bad Attitude Baptist blowout in Rochester, New York, I was introduced to street work. At the bus stop, as they would come in and change buses and whatever, and you get about 8 minutes, and then you get 15 minutes of break, and then here come the buses and the crowds, and they do it again, and I said, this is for me. I like this. I got some Bible that matches this, and it just fit me. It was a good fit. I was already preaching in the county jail, had been for a few years, and so same bunch. Only they just had pinstripe suits on, only difference. And so I brought that back to Tennessee, thinking, what kind of opportunity do I have here? And immediately I was introduced to a fella by the name of Ken Lansing in Memphis, which was 2 hours south of where I live, that did this on a regular basis. And so my wife and I came down. We got to meet Ken and Frida and become good friends. And I started going to Beale Street with Ken. And immediately realized a need, and that was this ragged old banner he had. Ken gives everything he has away. He gives good stuff, and he puts it in the hand of other people that'll go out and use it for the Lord, and he keeps the rags. That's just Ken. And so I said, you know what, I'm no artist. I'm a pretty good forger. I think I might come up with a way to be able to do this. Yeah. And so I got some images, and we started. I did back in the beginning. This is my actual old file. You'll recognize some of these. We started with overhead overlays and an overhead projector. All that has gone a little bit higher tech now. You know, you remember all. You've seen all these for years.
No, I haven't seen them.
You haven't seen all these? You can't have these. These are my old originals. You know, and you get bits and pieces. So anyway.
I thought you meant the transparencies. I've seen the banners, but not transparent.
Okay, well that's, if you have a banner, I've made probably 30 over the years that were all given away. They're scattered all over the world. But anyway, that's how we got started. We don't do it that anyway anymore. We have always used, since I've known Ken, and what he come up with this Tyvek. Ken started with curtain window shades. Those old nylon shades, you know, they roll themselves up and all that, and they don't last long on the street. They just shred before long, and so you get to redo it over and over again. And he come up with this Tyvek paper. Well, if you've ever gotten a priority mail from the post office, that's Tyvek. The very same, it feels the same, it's the same weight. I keep those in it because it's nearly indestructible. And so that's the material that we use. And what I want this class to be is a down and dirty. Are we good now? Yes, sir. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That sound better? All right. So what we'd like this class to be is you don't have to have a lot of stuff. All right. You can do it an easy way or the hard way, whichever way you choose to do it, with a minimal of equipment and a minimal amount of experience. If you can trace and draw, you can do it. Okay? So the banner you see in that corner right there, I created last week in the basement of our church. And I thought, well, I'll run these people out. For years I painted them in the back of the church I pastored on the wall in the back of the auditorium. There's no fuss, no mess if you'll be a little bit careful. I never even put anything on the carpet. Yes, sir.
So you have PSR, that means it's his original work, but he's allowing you to copy it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I've seen the pictures. I was wondering, I thought they were his.
Yes, they are his. Come out of a book that he wrote. And
He's okay? Because I know the bookstore doesn't always give you permission to do stuff.
well, he had no problem at all giving us permission to do that. And now we have JPEGs. What I did, I photographed my old banners, and I scanned those images in and put them in Photoshop and spent a little time. I'm a photographer also, and you come up with these color images that they say to freely use. If you're making banners with them, we want you to have them. And so they're good with them. I asked one thing. Dr. Ruckman did not specify as well. You talk to Mrs. You know, deal with some of it. She's a sweetheart, and she said, "I've never asked her, and they have never said, please put his initials there like he does. But gentlemen, out of respect for a man who freely gives, freely give, freely receive, freely give, that does that, put his initials down there. He spent some time doing that. It was his conception. God put it in his brain, and he lets us forge them. With permission. With permission. And so, yeah, we're plagiarists. Well, you know, it is what it is. If you're like me and don't have the talents, what are you going to do? You know, depend on someone else? Well, there's a time will come when there isn't someone else to depend on. And so you can move into that slot of making banners for other people. And there's a great joy in that. Sometimes you have to have help. The ones that went into Bulgaria and the Ukraine and that I made for Tom's Act and a bunch of them guys, they're still preaching at the train station to 1 million people in Kiev and Ukraine every day when they change trains. And they had to send me the Ukrainian language, the Russian, put on them and re-letter them for me, you know. And I said, hey, that's the way they go. I didn't bring it today. I'll bring it tomorrow. We got a folder. It's got all those banners we printed over the years for these different guys into Mexico. Also, so we use Tyvek paper. You can obtain that from Kim. And let's start with this very beginning of this thing. If you'll notice, there's a stitch at the top and the bottom all the way through. If you take the banner paper in its width and take that 5 inches, note 5 inches that it takes to make this rod pocket away from your banner, here is what you end up with. And so what we do is we leave that banner paper full length, and we sacrifice what would be a banner to cut it into 5-inch strips. And we take those, fold them in half, and what I use, and let me show you the actual tube. The ladies know about it. This is it's where I get it. It's called liquid stitch. It soaks into a fabric. It's not like, it smells a little like Elmer's glue, but it's not. You can put this on cloth, a tear. If you travel a lot, this ought to be in your kit. You tear clothing or whatever, you put this on and stick it, and it's stuck from now on, and it dries clear and goes away. And so what I do is I take that 5-inch piece right there on my desk, and I fold them in half and run them down. I keep a banner rolled, and I get one end out, and I take this thing and I go right down 1/2 inch up across there, and then I take this thing, slide it on, and put it right on there. I do put me a pencil line, 1/2 inch up to go by, and stick that thing down, flip that dude over, and it's already positioned now. Run a little tiny little bead of this across there and stick that dude on there. Now why do I go to that trouble? Because if you try and keep 2 pieces of this slippery stuff together while you're running it through a sewing machine, it's going to go everywhere, you know, like a room full of kindergartners. So stick it down, and then I recommend a zigzag stitch. This material runs through a cheap sewing machine beautifully. Use hand.
Walking foot.
I'm thinking of the thread. It's not anything special. It's a poly. It's twisted poly thread. It'll hold up to the abuse that we put it through.
It's a modern buttonhole thread.
I'm trying to think. Hand. It doesn't have to be invisible. White on white works fine. You might help me with the term, ladies that do embroidery. An embroidery thread, and it looks just like any other thread to me. But that stuff is really tough. It doesn't break. You have to cut it. You can't snap it. And so you see the size of this zigzag. It's less than 1/4 inch, maybe 3/16. And you put that through. What I did for years was I made 2 runs. You know, straight stitch, turn around and run through again, and so you have this going on down through there, and we run across this later on. That good zigzag like that. It also has a little give to it the straight stitch doesn't have, and it's almost indestructible. Never had one come apart. Start it, back up a little bit. Ladies know all about that. Get your wife to do this for you guys. And if you'll leave it rolled, when you get ready to run through that arm on that sewing machine, my wife guides it, and I get it in there and get it where I want it on that shoe, and you just let it, it'll just punch it right through, and she moves around the other end and catches it, and right out, that side's done, re-roll it for the other side, so you don't have this big mass of paper to try and sew. And so just leave it roll, so it's in this small, and it fits right underneath that arm, runs through there very easily. I highly recommend that you build them before you paint them.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, in my case, our sewing machine decided it didn't want to work, and I had a limited time, I had trouble getting paper. I went 2.5 months trying to get some paper, and I was off from work, and it came in a week before the blast. So you know who's behind all of that, well, it didn't work. I like to die, but I painted for 3 days in the basement. But anyway, build your banner. We sewed this one after they were painted. So if for some reason you're out of sync, you can do it either way. So the tie-back rod pockets, that's a 5-inch with a 1/2 inch overlap on each side, so you end up with 4 inches there. If you get it much tighter than that, you're gonna have a really hard time getting them in and out. Okay? And I do recommend putting bumpers on the end of them. If it ever gets away from you and hits somebody, and you haven't done just a minimal amount of preparation to protect people, you're in some deep doggy doo-doo. Okay, you can say, you know, I did all I could do. I put caps on the end so that they wouldn't poke people in the eyes and all that. We have to think about the people there. We're there to help them, not hurt them, right? Okay. If you haven't handled one of those in a 10-mile-an-hour wind, you haven't lived.
Can I ask you?
Signposts and lamp posts are your friend. Get on the windward side of that thing, let it blow it up against it, and just stand there and smile, let her go.
You ever put holes in them?
I haven't ever had to. It was either so bad we just couldn't do it at all, or we were able to manage them. And so look for that place where you can manage it, or not use it.
Right.
So that's how you construct the piece of paper that you're going to work on. I like to use masking tape. Here's my roll. I had to replace it. That's what, 1.5 inches, or is that 2 inch? Inch and a half, I think it is. And when I start that thing up, I get a square. I put one run around, and I usually leave about a 1/2 inch border of overlap on that thing. If you'll notice, you see that one's more like 1/4 inch around there. It gives it a nice sharp edge. If you do that. And so I take that around the banner itself before I start painting, and then I put a second run out there beside of it, which now gives you about 3-4 inches of space for overspray, because I use an airbrush. All right, so now you've got your canvas to work with, and then would you mind doing I have a young lady volunteer who's going to handle the illumination in our room for us. And so this is one of those JPEG images. This was the first and only one of these I had painted until the one you see out there that I painted last week. And it's a conglomeration of things. Can come up with a lot of this. You saw the overhead of some of this. So the first one used several different methods to get it together. To be honest, I don't use this one much. There's always some real zealous young man who just says, man, that's my thing. And I said, well, here you go. Let her rip. Ken and I make a pretty good pair on Beale Street. He's hard. He's been around those people a long time, and they come up to me and say, you're not like him. Well, no, we're all different. You know, you're a lot more soft-spoken. So he stirs the crowd up, and I get to deal with some of the issues to the ones that won't talk to him. And so it really works really, really good for us. All right, so what do? I use an airbrush. And I'm going to talk about the brush and whatever here just in a minute. But you have to think about color. How many can mix colors? You're going to end up, I'm going to give you the colors right now that you're going to use. Blue,
Red,
green, yellow, red, black, and white. You can get by without the green. You can make that with a couple colors, yellow and blue. But it helps to have, I use a lot of green, so it helps to have it already mixed. What am I painting with? I'm painting with vinyl dye. Vinyl dye. And would you hit the light for me again, please? I want to turn this banner over. I want to show you the back of it. Here's what vinyl dye does to Tyvek. It soaks into it. It's not superficial. It's now part of the paper. Why do I do that? You haven't lived till you've had beer, cocktails, margaritas thrown on you and your banners. Or my banners. Go home, lay them out in the yard. Close them off. Same brush I washed the car with. Close them back off. Dry them, and they're good to go again. If you use acrylic paints, some things, they decay over time. This dye will hold that bright, brilliant color forever. It really, really holds. By the way, if you notice this, I do this for the young preachers. They want to get started and they freeze up, lock up, you know. Here's one of the tricks. Okay, ding, note to self, asterisk. Right? If you use a Sharpie on the back of one of these, it's going to soak the Sharpie up too. You don't notice it on this one. When you go back out there, look at the banner of the Judgment, the Great White Throne Judgment, and some of that yellow bled through. I forgot my rule. The rule is if you're going to repair or if you're going to write on the back, take, and I always, after I paint one, I always take, I get it at Lowe's, it's lacquer, clear lacquer, and I use gloss so that things run off of it a little better. The colors are brighter with gloss on top rather than a matte. Okay. And after I get all through and they're completely dried the next day, I always put one, just a light coat of that on it. Well, if you're going to do this, come back here in the back and put a light coat of that lacquer on there and let it dry, the clear lacquer, and let it dry for about an hour. Then you can write, do anything on it, and it will not go through, soak through the paper. All right, so that's a trick.
Is it permanent then, or will it roll
Oh, yeah,
off?
no, it's permanent. Yeah, you will never get it back off. This one's not the bright colors that the other ones are, but they're going to keep that hue, and they're not going to fade, and they're tough as nails, and they can throw whatever lacquer thinner on. You're going to be all right. So, having said that, that's the fabric we use. The secret from then on, and my light person. Thank you. Now we've got to deal with color. You've got the colors to work with. You have to organize color. That one right there basically is 3 colors. It's the brown of the cross. It's whatever background, and you're going to find as you mix paints, you're going to have a color left. Saying, boy, you hate to throw that away. The little baby food jars are your friend. The dye that I painted that with, these cans of dyes right here, I bought in 1995. I don't store them in my home. I store them in a storage building where this past winter went down to 10 below zero.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
No gunk in the bottom. The stuff stays mixed. It's homogenized. I mean, it's the perfect medium to do this with because of the material it can come up with, that Tyvek, and the properties of this dye. And so when you get ready to paint, you're going to have to, this one is a tough one because you have to decide what order I'm going to lay these colors down. I'm going to put my color down with my airbrush first. And by the way, I like a 2-stage airbrush. When you push down, you start the air, and as you pull back, you adjust the flow of the paint. So if you want to, when you're in the middle right here, I start on the side, pull it back, get my middle down. When I move up to the edge, I back off a little bit so that they feather together. And you can blend colors beautifully with an airbrush. If you buy one and can afford the extra $10 for a 2-stage, then you'll have that opportunity. If not, it's going to be all adjusting this screw in here. Every time you want to go a little heavier or a little lighter, you're going to have to be playing with the needle inside of this thing all the time. 2-stage, set it light, and never have to move this. All right, we'll talk about those a little bit later. So to lay this color down on this banner, I took the yellow straight out of the can and thinned it. And you've got to get it thin to run through an airbrush, at least 2 to 1. Okay? And so I laid the yellow down first, and I'm right-handed, so I always stand off on this. And this is the beauty of this, so you can still work over this, and you can back up. All you do is put black where black is, yellow where yellow is, green where green is. You don't have to be an artist. And so I would lay the yellow down first, get it on there, and get it, pretty well sized. And then I add a little bit of, what color would I add to yellow to get green? Blue. And be careful. A little blue, look at it, stir it, a little blue, and then when you finally get it at the green, because you want it to stay light, you know, then here's another secret. These letters need to stay white. So I put a piece of paper up there, 8.5 by 14, and I take my pencil and mark it out, cut it out, and use tape and stick it on there so that it covers up all that white. Then I go ahead and I lay my green down, you know, get it on there, and I leave that on there until I get ready to letter it. Then, now I have 3 more colors. Red, kind of a pinky color, and orange. I try and keep them as close as I can. They're all different. You can't make 2 the same. Who cares if they are? They're all originals, except for Doc's. And so this particular one, I started with the red straight out of the can on the outside. Well, I need to go from red to orange. What color would I need to add? Yellow. We put a little yellow in it, and it gets this orangey flavor right here. Then I laid the orange down, and it blends right in with that yellow. I got that through. Now I need to end up with pink. What do I need to add to that orange to end up with pink? Who said it? What color? Say it again, hon. White. Just put some white in it, lightens it up, and there it is. It's kind of an orangey pink and lets it flow in with the color a little bit better. So I laid down all of that color, and I went to lunch. As I started from scratch, building the banner, getting it ready, hanging it, getting all this stuff back out. And so I went and had lunch, and I come back. This stuff dries fast. And so now I can start lettering, and I hand letter with these banners. I'm not near as steady as I'm 62 years old, so I'm not near as steady as I was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I started making these. So if you have some young eyes and young hands that are willing to work, that's a really good job for some young people who want to do something for the Lord. Let them do the lettering for you. They're steady, and all they have to do, you throw it up there, and they just trace it with the brush. Now let me talk to you about that. It's a workplace of the devil right there. You've got all this color laid down, and you're fixing to take black and start lettering on here, and I want to tell you something about vinyl dye and a brush. If it's not thin, if that viscosity isn't thin, it won't flow on there like you want it to. It's going to be rough, you're going to have to go back, you're going to have rough edges, so you have to have a pretty good load on that brush. And it has to be thin or it won't run out. When it's thin, it'll drip on you. I forgot my rule. The rule is when I'm lettering, I usually start at the top and work down. When I'm lettering this, I take another piece of plain paper and I tape it from here to here and let it hang down. And I try, and you can adjust this, you know, you don't have to get it. I would actually start this with the bottom down here so the top's about right here. When you start lettering that, if you'll cover this up, you get a drip. It drips on that paper, it doesn't drip on this. So if you'll notice my banners, all 3 of them somewhere have a couple of repairs in there where I've had a black drip, you know, and I've had to let it dry and then seal it and then come back and fix it and try and get the color like the color around the side. It just happens. So, you know, on the one out there, there's one here, there's one over here, and well, it is what it is. So put you some paper out to catch the drips. Lay the black down. If you want to come back and highlight it with the yellow, you can do that. Highlight it with the whites. And I work my way down. This is the last thing that I did is put the people in and then come in and highlight around them. Putting that border around really makes that person pop off. It also gives them that little 3D effect like they're not just laying there. The actual banner, this is reflection. Remember I told you I scanned in photos? And there was a flash, and this is the best I could do. And I thought, rather than try and really spend a week in there with Photoshop fixing it, I know what to do there. And so brown pants, and you know, you have the outline there. After you get that done, you come in and you do your Bible. You take that off then, and then put your piece of paper under here because you're going to be using black. And don't color in the letters right there. This one will take you about 6 hours. To lay the back down. It's a lot of handwork. The others, the judgments and the cross, I call it, do not have as nearly as much handwork as this one does. But that's how we do a banner. Start with the background. If you would, the lights, please. What's your name?
Hannah.
Hannah. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate it. If you'll turn your attention to this back one, here's the one that gets everybody. I have to stop and think. This is great. I didn't have a problem. It was actually a bunch of leftovers, and I made something out of it. Some of them were kind of a greenish color, some of them were tan. I figured it was kind of a gray day. It was really gray from the 3rd to the 6th hour.
Right.
If you're painting banners to go into Central and South America, I found this out when I was fixing one for Brother DeLarca, you cannot leave the hair long like that. When they see someone with long hair, they immediately think drug lord, drug addicts, the drug cartels. You got to crop that hair probably like it really was. I do it this way because this is the way Dr. Rutten painted it. Okay. But I cropped one for him. He said, man, if we show that, they're going to flee because they immediately think of the drug culture and those people that are in their countries. So you might have to be a little bit give and take when you do this because of the audience that the band is going to. All right? Here's the one that gets people with this one. It's actually pretty easy to paint. And I airbrushed as much as I could, but I'm not sharp enough with a fine needle. Some of these guys that do t-shirts, man, they can make lines, you know, like a pencil line. I'm not that steady. So I do it all with a brush. What colors does it take, if you know, raise your hand. What colors does it take to make brown?
Yellow and black? Bordered black? Red and black?
Anna knows. What color does it take, Anna? Red and black make dark red.
Green and blue.
As soon as you hit blue on there, you have orange with red. So forget about blue, orange, one orange, one brown. So yellow and green make brown, and then you darken it with black to get it down to this color. If you get a nice chocolate brown, I highly recommend you make enough for your baby food jar and save it for, a baby food jar will do 4 of these banners easily. And then save a little bit out and lighten it with white to get flesh tone. That's a trick. That's a real trick. So be conscious that once you get a good flesh tone, you're going to want to save that, because that can be a real problem to get it mixed just right. So there are some tricks this way to do that. So the brown is the hard thing. It is yellow and blue with some black to darken it up, and you can get that nice rich brown color. All right, enough about the actual banner itself. Let's talk about equipment. You do not have to have an expensive airbrush. A family, my son actually bought this one for me. It is a old model Posh. I started with one I got at Kmart. Our city used to have a Kmart's. They had a model section. How many remember when stores had a model? Yeah, not anymore. They're gone. They're gone. You know, I don't know. I can't even buy the glue. But I started with a cheap Pla. Does that sound right? Is that the name of that paint we use? All the little bottles of paint we use, model paint, for years and years. Testers, that's it, brother. And they had a little kit you could buy for like $12. It had a little airbrush in it and a hose. It was a single stage, but it did a really nice job. It really did. And you bought cans of propellant. Yeah, that's what it was. It was R12. That's exactly right. And you could paint a banner with a can and a half of propellant. You had to watch though, as it got low, being refrigerants, the pressure, when it start freezing up, it wouldn't be any pressure. You'd have to set it aside and let it warm up and get your other can and use it and play that game back and forth. And so with 3 cans, I could make 2 banners. Well, after you make about 6 or 7 banners, you're throwing a lot of money in the garbage with that can and that propellant. It does a good job, but you're playing that game. And someone purchased this little hobby compressor for me. They're not that expensive. And the hose is plenty long enough, and it just runs right to your airbrush. They're going to try and sell you regulators and filters and all that kind of stuff. You see what I'm doing? Straight on there, straight to my airbrush, and I have 0 problems with it. It keeps up. You don't have to wait on it. The pressure is just right. this one's been around a long time, and has served me well. They're not all that noisy to operate with, so that is another way to do it. Depends on how into this you want to get. You can do it with you can build you a banner with 2 cans of propellant and a cheap airbrush from the local hobby store. You don't have to spend that kind of money on one. They're not that much better. They're real or not, so you don't have to have that. So that's how you lay the color down. And then the brushes, these are we've got several over there, but these are the ones I use over and over and over and over again. They come from Walmart over in the hobby section for enamel paint. And you see the widths that I've got right there. This one is actually a little pointed. Can you see that? That's all you need. This is going to make the widest, when it spreads out with paint in it, it's going to make the widest letter that you're going to need to make, or you can make 2 passes. You don't want to load up much more paint than what this guy's going to hold. It's going to be loosey-goosey on you and drip on. As it starts working down here, you got to get it clean, back off. And by the way, what that's that you mark off or that you wipe off in that jar, you put a little thinner in there and shake it. Dissolves it right back down. It's ready to use again. You have very little waste if you'll be careful with it. So those are the kind of brushes I use. Nothing fancy. Some of the stuff looks rough because I loaned it to my son to do some bass baits with, and he put it up with paint and everything and made a mess. And I thought about killing him, but anyway, he bought most of the stuff, so I couldn't do that. All right, so that's the nature of the beast. So you've seen how that works. We're talking about the equipment. Now the die. It's vinyl die. How am I doing on time? What time do you got?
10 till 12.
Oh man, okay. Vinyl die. Go to your local guy that does automotive paint and say, who is your supplier? Where do you get your paint from? In my case, I live in Union City. The closest paint distributor back then was in Jackson, Tennessee, up the road here. And I went to there and talked to those guys, and I said, look, I need some vinyl dye. And they said, well, here's our chart. What color do you want? What kind of vehicle is it? We're going to reinvent the wheel right here. I want the base colors. I want what you pull out of to make these colors. Oh, I said, is it any more expensive? He said, well, no, it's all dye. And so I give him my list of the, is it 7 colors? 6 colors? And he had the cans, and he filled these guys up for me. And I think back then this was about $60 worth. I'm still painting banners out of that same. But I'm at the point I'm going to have to get a couple colors. So I don't know what I've been asked. What brand is it? I don't know. I don't know what it was. It's whatever they use to mix vinyl dye. And what they do is they repair dashes and seats and whatever, after wrecks and all that. They match colors up to dye the vinyl. So that's what it is. It is vinyl dye. And that's where to get it. Automotive paint supplier. You can start Googling that, and you're going to come up empty. Yes, sir.
Might try a sign maker too. I've got 2 friends in sign making, and he does vinyl. So you could try a sign maker.
There you go. There's another option right there. Sign maker.
That's a web.
They use vinyl. Yeah. They use,
That's a website. Signmaker.
No, well, signmaster.com is the guy that does a
There you
lot
go.
of my stuff for me. But I know he has those colors, big cans.
okay. Here's
So he actually has the base colors.
Signmaster.com
Or
does vinyl.
he does it, but I would find it. I'd go to a sign maker that does vinyl in your area, and then find out maybe
We
where he
have a
gets
hard
it.
time shipping this stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not going to.
it's hazardous problem.
It's very volatile. It is hazardous. That's why I drove to Jackson to get it. Okay, so that's your source for the dye. Use lacquer thinner to clean your brushes, to thin it. It works really well. The lacquer overspray. Remember, after you get through, put on it to seal your banner. There are little tricks like the baby food jars to save any leftovers where you just hate to pour that stuff out. It's like gold. And if you want to take a look, if you want to, that's not a very expensive. I think that one, the kit with the jars, other needles, and it comes with a hose.
Right.
This one was given to me, and I've never used it. It's a nice little. I've never hooked it up. My son said, Dad, the guy that gave this to me, I want to give it to you. said that it worked fine, didn't come with a bottle or anything. Who needs an airbrush? Who needs an airbrush? You gonna use an airbrush, brother?
One day, I mean, we gotta make that.
Problem solved there. All right, I won't. This one here is doing fine for me, and that's, I know everything moves in it, and I took it apart and cleaned it, and it was clean. It was already clean. So you adjust your needle back here. That's just a cover. You loosen this up, and you can move your needle in and out, and set your, with air pressure on it, this button will be popped up. I already tried it. I've loosened thinner through it just to make sure it works. I was hoping somebody would need one, I could give one.
And you do the thinner in between, clean out the collar?
I keep this little guy right here, this little plastic one, they all have dip tubes so that they pull off the bottom. I keep this guy with thinner on it over on one other table. When I take the paint, excuse me guys, when I take the paint color off, the jar with the paint, when I remove it from under the airbrush, I put this one right on and on newspaper till I get clear, and I leave it set till I get ready to go again, and you never have any clogging, you can work all day. At lunch, to be honest, at lunch, I'll take it off and I'll get a brush and clean off the very end right there. Sometimes it wants to build up a little bit around the needle. But that's really the only thing you have to do. Do yourself a favor, do a good job at the end cleaning. So clean it up.
What stuff that they normally use for airbrushing, we're using different stuff than what people usually paint with.
An airbrush is an airbrush, it sprays liquid. So if you get the viscosity thin enough so that it goes through the orifices smoothly, then you have to deal with how fast it dries. You want it to be wet when it hits and then dry pretty quick.
Right.
So you're going to have to play with it. And I don't measure anything. I say, you know what, that's about right. And I have never had any trouble. It's not rocket science. Okay? It's not brain surgery. My buddy says brain science. You know, it's a good combination. You can spray any kind of paint, whatever liquid with it. My recommendation, of course, is the dye, because it is permanent
Well, on
and
this
it's
thing,
there.
right.
So to do a repair down here in this, on this red area, I had to spray some of that clear lacquer on to let it dry overnight, and then I come back and did my repair so that the blacks and whatever, they didn't try and soak together. Okay, you don't have to do that after you put the color down and you get ready to black. You don't have to do that. That'll work fine, because the black is the darker of the two, and it lays right on down. All right, without mixing. Any other questions? I won't give you time for
How about
questions.
UV fade? You got that thing for 5 years out on the street. Is it, no problems?
None.
Do any stenciling?
You can. What I do, and those of you here, sometimes some of this is hard to read, and after you've copied it, photocopied it, you can. Here, just let me show you one. You want to clean up the lettering, and what I do is I just take and I use PageMaker and then JPEG it. Then Adobe. Put your letters down, put your paint down, your scheme down. You get ready to do your lettering. Now you can take that and lay it right across that banner up there and adjust it, get it just exactly where you want it. Now you have nice crisp edges that you can go along and letter behind. So you don't have to use the lettering
So that's kind of like a
that is there.
Microsoft, that's like a Microsoft Word or,
Word doc.
okay, and then you're projecting it actually with
Right
this.
there, just another file.
And the old way was the overheads.
The overhead.
That's what I used to do, overheads, so the LCD
And what-
projector's much better.
What we would do, well, that's
Yeah,
crisp,
color,
and
yeah.
color is what makes a big difference. Help you get it right. Keeps you from having to go back and forth, and look between them. And then, of course, you can adjust these. Maybe you're going to put different verses on them. We're not all the same. We don't have the same message. God doesn't put the same thing in our heart for all the time, and you may want to put something different on there. And so you don't have to use the messages there. Paint the banner, the scene, and then, how many of you have seen the banner that has Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law before? What do we see? Sin, sin, sinners. There's another one out there that says something else on it. That's what gripped me. And so that's why I put that on. Be original. Be original. Paint the message that God give you. And use the verse that God give you for it. Okay? Any other questions? Yes.
What do projectors usually run?
They're a lot cheaper now. You can get one for $3.99.
Oh, easy. Easy.
They were $4,000 when I got my first one in year 2000.
All right.
Yeah, they're-
I'll
Let me
I'll
explain
start
to
looking
you.
on
They're not even
eBay and
good.
Craigslist and
Oh
find
yeah,
a
you'll
used
find
one.
it. Oh yeah.
You don't have to have expensive things to do this. I teach. I teach scuba diving and medical classes for American Heart, and so I'm out and around on the road, and so I have a kit, audio-visual kit with a speaker and with that in it. And you don't have to have expensive things like this to do this. I use this in my daily life. I'm retired, and so that's what I do
Yeah.
now. I teach a train.
Yeah, or find a brother in Christ and go, can I borrow this for a weekend?
And some, yeah,
Church?
borrow it, sure,
Church.
sure.
Yes,
I understand.
Yeah,
But they are, like Brother Doug said, they're a lot less expensive now. If you pick that one up, it's very light. They don't weigh anything. They're not the heavy units that they used to be. That one's still, thank the Lord, running off the same bulb, and boy, that used to
Yeah,
be
don't
a
buy an
problem.
extra bulb.
No.
They tried to sell me one in 2000. I finally gave it to a church in 2013. Never got a new bulb, and bought me a new one.
If you're gonna put out $600, now they're LED, and they're really bright.
Won't burn out.
And they're not gonna burn out as.
You get any
like as ever.
overspray? I mean, you're using this in your shop, so does it spray over?
I painted my first couple dozen banners on the back wall. The last pew was right there, paneling wall of our church, the church I pastored, right on that white paneling. And I taped that paper on there and put an extra runner on the outsides, and never dripped the first drop on the carpet, and never had any overspray on that paneling. There's
So
little
it
or
really doesn't get up in
none.
the air. Okay.
Little or none. So if you've got 4 inches, you got control there. You don't have to run way over there. You get it up and let it run over a little bit so you make sure you got the edge covered. When you pull that tape off, you get that beautiful straight edge underneath it. It makes it look a little more professional. Okay. I don't put anything on the floor. I had a drip, and I painted these in the back in the basement of the church that we attend now. And I had one little black drip, and I put some of that black thinner on it, and gone. Didn't hurt anything on the cartridges. Okay. Another question. We're going to have to call it off, or you're going to miss lunch. Have they eaten lunch yet?
No.
We could go till they start coming in if you have other questions.
Where do you put the paint in those spray guns?
Oh, okay. It could be as, I'm just going to do some faces. It comes with this little open cup right here, and it sticks right on there like that. Put it on either side. And so that would be, you can see that being your way. So I'm painting, and it stays right in that little cup. Lay it on with that. If you have more, like you're doing these big background colors on there, then there are jars from this size. Okay, that one still has my flesh tone in it, my official Caucasian. Okay. This one has that pink in it.
I wouldn't put a black man on there. You get in trouble.
Someone's going to ask you. Someone is going to ask you while you're in Memphis. Why do you have him painted white?
Okay, yeah.
We know he's black. Why did you paint him white? I'll tell you what I told him. I said, well, what color is a Jew?
That's right.
He's of the tribe of
Judah.
Judah.
How's the date?
And that usually brings an end to the conversation. They have an agenda.
Yeah.
So do we. And we need to get them to see past that, see what he is, instead of what nationality it is. Right? So you see how that clings on? And all I did was just stick it up in there. In fact, it's hard to get off. And so you got a dip tube and it sucks it up. And it mixes real easy. And it's as simple as that. It's not that big a deal.
They're walking out.
Okay. I've showed you the brushes, we talked about the tape, we talked about the thinner, the dye, how to spray it, the order to do things, some of the tricks. The one about putting that paper up to catch your drips will save you a lot of heartaches. You get right to the end and, I on all 3 of those. And then I remembered after I got home, dummy, you used to use paper. It's been 10 years since I painted a banner. It's been, now I remember. Note to self, make sure you tell them. Okay, make sure you tell them. Ask friends, start getting some baby food jars. You need probably a dozen. You know, if you plan on doing more than one, save what you have. It's already mixed up, don't pour it out. At the church, I didn't have extra things, and so I went up in the kitchen and got some coffee cups. And I used that to move stuff around, and when you get through, you dump it all out and clean it up like this. And I got some soap in the sink and washed them out and put them back, and you can't tell any difference.
Except when the people get a little high from the
Nah,
coffee.
they're glazed, they're glazed. That stuff's easy to work with. And I'll tell you something about lacquer thinner and vinyl dye. They have a little sweet smell to it. It's not like breathing paint thinner. Lacquer thinner is a lot easier on the nose. I stayed in a room this size with no ventilation, no outside air source, downstairs in the basement of a church, and never took a fan down in there with me. And I painted from 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and come back the next day, and I did it 4 days in a row. And I have very sensitive sinuses and problems with allergies and all of that, and I felt no side effects. You can get you a fan blowing in that room you're at, you will absolutely not have any problems. And I painted the last one Saturday, and we couldn't smell it Sunday. So this lacquer thinner is forgiving as far as odor and all of that does. Keep you from being intrusive.